personal exercise coach. And I guess that pretty much wraps up my career for the last 37 to 38 years. I have specialised in exercise. It was my passion. When I was 17 years of age, I was told, do what you love, you never have to work another day in your life. And the other aspect of that is if you do what you love over your life, you become a specialist in it. You become an expert. It will be your specialty, it will be your lane. And it's been my lane for those 30 going on 38 years, and you watching this session means that it's also your lane. You're obviously passionate about exercise, training and fitness for personal reasons and for reasons that you want to go and help other people. In my opinion, health is the most important value of all, because when you lose your health, nothing else matters. So health is a vital part of life because it actually gives you life. And the best way to enhance your health is to get people to exercise. We now know that exercise is the greatest intervention to improve physical and mental health. And that is the one thing that I've been addicted to. And if you want to be really great at something, you almost have to be addicted to it. And I'm sure the reason why you are wanting to be an exercise professional is because your happy place might be going to the gym, or going to the boot camp, or going to the sporting field. That is the place that you go to that you love, that ignites you and gives you energy. And now you want to turn that passion into a professional career. And if that is your passion and that is your lane, and you stick to that lane, you're going to become a specialist in it. You're going to be great at it. What I've found in my journey over the last 38 years is that obviously people come and go. You know, they come into the profession, they give it a go, they chop and change, and then they go. For whatever reason, that's not for me to say. I also see people who chop and change. They go from one lane to another lane to another lane to another lane. So they become average to good at most things, but never actually great at anything. And it depends on what you want to be. Do you want to be a generalist, or do you want to be a specialist? And if you want to be a specialist, then it's really important that you find your lane, your calling, your purpose, and you develop that throughout your career, as I have as an exercise professional. I have stuck pretty much to one lane for 38 years. And I also see people who chop and change. So the interesting thing about that is if you keep chopping and changing, you never spend enough time in one lane to become great in that lane. Now, KMAX International Fitness College, the lane that we are in is developing world-class, sensational, great exercise professionals. That is the lane. And it doesn't mean that we don't cover other aspects of health and well-being in the program. Certainly we cover other lanes such as nutrition and rehabilitation and training for kids and all sorts of other lanes, but that's really important to understand the other lanes and have a good understanding there so you can use that to be great in your designated lane. The reason for that is because it's very hard to be great at a lot of things. Where I'm living at the moment, there's lots of construction, lots of housing construction, and what I do see when going into the houses, you see a plumber will go in and they will set up the plumbing. Then I will see a electrician go in and they will do the electrical work, and I see a carpenter who will go in there and do some of the woodwork. What I don't see is one person going in and doing everything. If I say, hey, what do you do? And they gives me their card, it says I'm a carpenter and I'm a plumber and an electrician, I'm an engineer, and I'm thinking, wow, you do everything. You must be 1,000 years of age, because to become great at one thing, to be a master of your craft in one thing, we now know from research, to master it, it's going to take you at least 10,000 hours of dedicated study and experience and learning and application. 10,000 hours, no matter what, whether it be sport or craft, or whether it be music, or whether it be your career. To become great at something, there's 10,000 hours. So for somebody to become a master at multiple things, they're not going to live long enough to master everything. They'll become good at everything, but a master of none. So someone who has a car who's a plumber and an electrician and does all of that, they're not really a specialist in anything. They're more of a handyman. If you want to build your dream home, are you going to get a handyman or a handy person to come in and build it? No, you're going to get the best person in each field to come in to build your perfect home. I also get the same in the fitness profession. I remember getting a card, and on the card was, I'm a specialist, and this was an exercise professional or personal trainer. Says I specialise in bodybuilding and weight loss and rehabilitation and sports conditioning and there's a whole list, a plethora of things that that person, and at the end it says security. I said, oh okay, well basically that person is probably a security guard and doing little bits and pieces in the fitness profession but never really become successful at anything, so he tries to do everything. So if you try to do everything, you become great at nothing. And I see that a lot in business cards, and that's fine if you want to sort of dabble around, but understanding it's going to be very hard to become famous for one particular thing. If I use the name Ronaldo, you think of soccer. If I use Muhammad Ali, you think of boxing. If I say Michael Jordan, you think of basketball. Because those people stuck to their lane and they became the best in the world in their lane in their sport. Ronaldo didn't go and play soccer and then he went and played cricket, and then he went and played a bit of football, a bit of badminton, a bit of tennis. No, he stuck to his lane that he's most passionate about. Because if he tried to switch and change things, you never actually become great at anything. So if you learn the lessons from people who are masters of their craft in sport or art or music, then and apply that to your profession and the exercise profession, then you're going to become the Ronaldo of exercise professionals. That's all I've ever done. I've just stuck to that one thing. It's like, I guess, if you look at a GP, if you're sick, then you go to a GP, which is a general practitioner. And they've done their degree, and that's fine, and they're happy to be a GP. But if you want to become a specialist, then you have to go and do further in-depth study on top of that to further that lane. So you might go from a GP to an orthopedic surgeon, and then you become an orthopedic surgeon that specialises in knees. And obviously, the more higher up you go, in terms like a peak, the more people will pay to get you because there's less of you with that special expertise. And the expertise of Max is on developing and creating and enhancing exercise professionals. You notice that we don't divert into doing all sorts of other things. We just stick to what we're great at. And not only are we great at it, we have a massive resources and a library of resources for you to be great at it, to apply exercise to each individual area depending on where it might be. So what's really important, if you want to become a specialist in your field and you want to be the best in your lane, then focus on that and develop that to a level that no one else even considers, where they're always chopping and changing, never getting great, never getting momentum in anything. You're sticking to your lane. If you do that, then you're going to have a very fruitful, successful, very fulfilling career where you'll be at the top of your mountain, you'll be at the top of the pile in your field. But to get on the top of the pile, how do you get there? Well, obviously, you have to build a very strong foundation. Now, the higher the building, the greater the foundation you need to build. Now, if you want to build the highest high-rise in the city, then you're going to find most of the time is worked on the foundation to get a good, strong foundation. Because if it's a little shallow foundation, then the building's going to fall over. When I say foundation, it means you need to choose, obviously, to do the best program for you to build the hardware that you're going to build. So if you're going to become a great exercise professional, yes, Max is the place for you. We are the most comprehensive educational college in the area of exercise professionals, in my view, in the world, because this is all I've ever done. I've only ever started back 31 years ago, and now with Rory and Savvy, we've built this and built this and built this, and we haven't diverted from that lane. We become the fastest in that lane. So you have at your disposal a massive, not just a massive amount of wealth of knowledge and experience from myself, 37 years, Rory, 37 years, Savvy, 30 years. You're looking well over 100 years of people in experience as exercise professionals in a variety of areas in that field. But you also have the resources that I started developing 31 years ago. So even some of the resources in the program now are still from 37 years ago, because some things just don't change. For example, anatomy just does not change. It hasn't changed in 37 years. I don't have 3 arms now, I still have 2. So how do you build that strong foundation that's going to catapult you to the top and put you into the category which is equal to other specialists in their lane? So if you become the best in your lane, you'll be equal to other specialists in their lane, such as the orthopedic surgeons, such as the sports physicians, such as the doctors, such as the sports physiotherapists, such as the dietitians. So you can go to that level without having to go into their lane. In my journey, because of my focus and my development and what I did, then I could quite easily be able to converse with other allied health professionals and work together in a respectful way and in an equal way to help the clients that I was looking after. So let's have a look at the three main things that you need to develop to put yourself as a specialist, as an expert in your lane. Well, first of all, it's quite simple. The first thing is you have to know your stuff, right? Just know your stuff. Now, in that process, what's important is that your learning is dedicated to you becoming better, not about passing a test. Now, what I find a lot, and when I went to university about 100 and so years ago, it seems that way, is that I studied to pass a test, which is the wrong motivating factor, which means I memorised to regurgitise, I passed the test, and after that I forgot everything. So I came out of university not remembering anything because my driving force, being ignorant and naive in my younger days, was I just need to get past the test. And I was doing, I just need to pass the test. And passing the test doesn't mean I want to be the best I can possibly be. I want to get 100%. I want to do more than that. I want to do more than what's required. It was just doing what is required. Now, obviously I've learned a lot since then. And found then if you do that, you're going to pass the test, but you'll be ending up at the bottom of the pack. You'll be at the bottom of the pile, bottom of the mountain, and you'll be average and you won't do very well because you have an average attitude and you develop an average character. And an average character is not going to go very far because, you know, what you develop, what you commit to and develop yourself and develop your character, and that will enhance your knowledge and your experience and your technical skills and all those things, and that will build a great toolbox. It will provide magnificent opportunities for you. So the first thing is knowing your stuff. Now, in exercise, as an exercise professional, what do we really do? If you really go down to the nuts and bolts of it without trying to complicate it, because a lot of people try to complicate things. You go to different short courses, you go to different Instagram pages or seminars, and what they try to do is they try to really complicate things to confuse you, to make you think that they're this expert who knows all this weird stuff that you don't understand. Because you don't understand, you think, well, they're smarter than me, so they must be the experts, so I'll blindly follow what they say. So they'll start throwing big words and complicated things at you and big terminologies and stuff which you never heard of before, and you'll be razzled and you'll be dazzled and you go, oh my gosh, and then you get into that little, hey, you're my superstar, you're the chosen one, I don't really know what you're talking about, but I'll follow because you seem to know what you're doing. And they say it with a lot of confidence. And as the great Einstein beautifully says, a egotist would take something simple and make it very complicated, where a genius would take something complicated and make it really, really simple. And here at Max, we aim to make things simple. We make it, we look at a complex thing, whether it be anatomy or physiology or biomechanics, and then we try to make it really simple for you to understand, not just for you to understand so you can take ownership of it and really understand it, but also be able to pass it on to your clients to know that you're looking after their interests, and you can explain this to them so they know why they are doing what they're doing. And the beautiful saying when it comes to exercise is you always have to ask this question, which Ray beautifully says to lots of people: why am I doing this and how does it work? Why am I doing this and how does it work? So the why has to reattach to the goal or the outcome, whatever that might be, and how does it work, which means the processes, the anatomical, physiological, biomechanical, chemical processes that justify why you're doing it, that will give you the result that you desire. So if you look at those separately, why am I doing this? Well, that's a good reason. A lot of people exercise for the sake of exercise, but don't really look at why am I doing this and what outcomes do I want out of this. Do I want to increase my cardiovascular fitness? Do I want to increase my strength? And if I want to increase my strength, what do I want to increase my strength for? What do I want to increase my cardiovascular fitness for? What is the application of that into your life or your client's life, and how's it going to improve their life? So the why is a really important thing, where a lot of time exercise professionals forget the why. They just take clients through a exercise session and they start giving them certain exercises because maybe they're fashionable exercise or recent trendy exercises at the time, and because it's the new thing that they start to do the new thing without thinking of why am I doing this new thing and how does it relate to my client's goals from an anatomical, physiological, functional way, and how is it going to benefit them in achieving that goal. And if you ask that question, then you might start to think, well, does that even make any common sense? And if you do have a reasoning behind it, then you have to say, how does that work? And obviously when you ask how does that work from an exercise point of view, well, if you look at exercise, well, this is what exercise really is. Exercise is really activating muscles, to pull on bones, to move joints, to move the body in a synchronized manner that is linked into the person's outcome. And in that process, you also activate the nervous system, that activates the muscles, that pulls on the bones. Now that in turn needs to be fueled by energy. And then in the muscle, energy is produced. So you look at the physiology of energy production through the energy timelines. And that has to be fueled by energy, which you have to get from outside, which you eat food through the digestive system that gets absorbed into the cardiovascular system, that gets that gets delivered to the working muscles through the blood vessels. And you have to also need oxygen or gases to help in those biochemical processes, and you need that through the respiratory system. So really, by activating muscles to pull bones, to move joints and bones, and to move the body, you'll be activating all of those systems. The respiratory system, the cardiovascular system, the nervous system, the muscular system, the skeletal system, and that will cause a stimulus or stressor on the endocrine system, which will release the appropriate hormones to create change in the body, create physiological change. But ultimately what we do, if you look at from a bare essentials, we get people to move. We get them to move by lifting weights to increase strength, to move frequently and regularly to increase cardiovascular fitness. We get them to move. And how we get them to move, according to the weights that we lift or the speed that we run or the intensity and the frequency of the training, then we basically, that stimulus will determine the physiological response on all the other systems, whether it be more neural drive from the nervous system, a greater need from the cardiovascular system, whether it be a greater oxygen requirement through the respiratory system, whether it be a greater endocrinal response through the endocrine system. So how we get them to move with the intensity and the volume and the frequency, how we get them to move and the type of stress will determine the physiological responses that occur throughout the body. So it's really important that you have a great understanding of, first of all, the tools that we use to activate those responses. And the tools we use is activating the muscles to move the bones. That's the tools that we use. And how we use those two tools will determine what happens to all the other energy systems. So what's vital is that you have a great knowledge, a real in-depth knowledge of your anatomy and your physiology and your basic biomechanics, because movement and speed and velocities and forces are all biomechanics, and a bit of chemistry, because that's the physiological occurrences that occur in the muscles, the physiological responses that occur in the muscles, that's all chemical. The endocrine system is all chemical, and the neural system is electrical. So to have a good knowledge of those main things, particularly the muscular and the skeletal systems, are going to be the two main things, and then a good general knowledge of all the rest and how they're connected to the muscles and the bones, because these two stimulate everything else to get the required physiological change that the person wants, whether it be increasing performance or fat loss or building muscle, building strength, building agility, building stability, whatever it might be. So getting a great depth of knowledge in that is essential. And what I do find in my career is that most exercise professionals learn just enough to pass the test to get their certificate in anatomy and physiology, and they get the ticket and they forget it all, and they didn't really learn a lot of in-depth because they just wanted to get the ticket. Then they go out there into the gym and start doing things to people which many times is not always the safest thing, the most effective thing, the most efficient thing for the client, because they don't have that good understanding, that great understanding of anatomy. For example, a lot of trainers will start to say, well, this is a great exercise for the core, and that's a great term. It's only been around for the last 7 or 8 years. I never heard of it for the first 30 years of my career, but it's a trendy term now, the core. This is great for the core. And if you're going to use that word, then you have to be prepared that someone like myself might call you up and say, okay, the core, so what are the 7 main muscles of the core? What are the 7 main muscles that make up the core? What is its origin, insertion, what is their action, what is the joint actions, and what is their main function? So, and then their line of pull. So if you don't understand those top 7, then maybe you don't really have the right to use the word core, because you don't really know what core is. So if you don't know what core is, how can you train it in an appropriate manner to get the outcomes that you want? So a lot of people use these trendy terms. Obviously, function is a real big thing at the moment. I'm a functional specialist, and they start to give you exercises that Well, function means that it is related to daily life activities. So you have to be able to look at the exercise and the activities that the person does on a day-to-day basis or in their sport, and they have to sort of look pretty much similar to have a great transference of performance from one to the other. And you know, if I spend my time in the upright position and you get me laying down on the ground, I think, well, wait a minute, that's like getting me to become a better runner by making me going swimming. That doesn't make any sense. We're in the wrong environment, the wrong body position, the wrong movement pattern. Everything is actually wrong. Yes, this swimming is difficult, but it's a wrong type of difficult. So a lot of people use things such as functional training that gets people on the ground on all sorts of weird contraptions and doing all sorts of weird things, and will get you hanging from the ceiling like a trapeze and doing crazy things up there. And yes, they're complicated and they're complex and they're hard, but they're the wrong complicated and the wrong complex and the wrong hard, because they're not really related to the outcome of what the person wants. Because they're saying functional, but the body position, the joint movements, the joint activation, the type of contractions are actually quite dysfunctional. They are dysfunctional in relation to that functional movement or that functional outcome that they want. So that's someone who doesn't have a good understanding of basic common sense to start with. Then you're looking at biomechanics, and then you're looking at anatomy, and then you're looking at physiology. And the beautiful thing about in the MAX program, you have a massive resources of information and videos and audios on anatomy. And that's why we give you a life education, because this is the life journey. You've chosen your lane and you're going to be in there for the rest of your life. So that KMAX principle, continue never-ending improvement, you want to keep learning, keep learning, keep learning. And part of that learning is refreshing and going deeper into the knowledge you already have to get a deeper understanding. So you may know something, but you may not fully understand it. And I've learned that in my journey, is that even though I knew a lot of things, say 10, 20, 30 years ago, it's the same knowledge, but now I have a deeper understanding because I keep revisiting it with new eyes, with new experiences, because I'm a different person. I've got better experiences over my time. So that's why we give you a life education. You have access to literally thousands and thousands of training videos in every area of exercise and anatomy and physiology. And then you also have all the related areas with massive resources on the related areas that make you better in your lane, your exercise training lane, your exercise professional lanes, which in the other areas such as nutrition and rehabilitation and training specific population groups and all that. So we have all of that, but they all have a common theme of exercise, because training a child to the elderly person, you have to have a deep understanding of anatomy, because both of them have the same anatomy, the same physiology. Yes, they may have different levels of performance due to the aging factor, but you still have to have that great understanding of anatomy and physiology and basic biomechanics and chemistry and physics. And that's what we have given you in one program, where you get everything in the one program depending on what area you want to specialize in. Now, all of the specialists have to have a great understanding of anatomy, and then how you apply that anatomy, whether you apply that to training children, or whether you want to apply that to training the elderly, or you want to apply that to training elite athletes, or you want to apply that to training rehabilitation. All of those population groups have basically the same anatomy, the same physiology. But unless you know your core of anatomy, your fundamentals of anatomy at a deeper level, you won't know how to adapt that anatomy to each population group. So that's why we spend so much time, and we encourage you to really know your anatomy and physiology. And that's one of the things that which I was committed to through some embarrassing moments in my career, where I sort of came unstuck because I didn't know my anatomy, and I ended up hurting some people because I gave them a stupid exercise, which I thought was a great exercise because it was a fashionable exercise at the time. Because I, like everyone, joined the herd to become a fashion trainer, follow what everyone else is doing, follow the trends, rather than following anatomy. You know, I decided, because when I almost hurt someone and took away the Olympic dream from them, I thought, why am I doing this exercise and how is it working? When I started asking those questions, I couldn't come up with good, justifiable answers from an anatomical, physiological, biomechanical point of view. And I found the only reason why I was doing that is because I was just copying everyone else. And I thought, I don't want to be a copier, because if I copy everyone else, I'd just be a partial of everybody else. I'd just be average. I want to be great. And to be great, I have to know the truth. I have to know, I'd be able to justify what I do from an anatomical, physiological, biomechanical point of view. So instead of following the herd, I decided to follow the truth. And the truth was in knowing your stuff. And when I knew my stuff like that, then I could make my own decisions on firm ground because the three things that give you confidence. The foundation of confidence is competence. And you have to be very competent in your knowledge, which is all the fundamental knowledge for your trade, your craft, which is exercise, your skill set, your skills, so you have to be able to apply that. So your ability to apply that anatomy into your skills is teaching exercise, executing exercises, controlling programs, that's your skills. And then experience means the more you do it, the better you become in it, and the more you understand it. So if I hear it, I forget it. If I see it, I remember it. If I do it, I understand it. And that's why there's so much practical requirements in the MAX program, because you're going to get that deeper understanding from actually doing it yourself and doing it with other clients and training other clients. So make sure you consistently build your foundation. It's all there. We are producing Max Bites every day, we're producing KMAXs every week, we're producing seminars every month. So we are consistently always adding to that massive pool of knowledge that you can tap into, and you can build your own pool of knowledge. So if you're going to build a pool that you're going to dive into, and you're going to be the high diver, you want to make it a deep pool. So make sure your knowledge is deep. And you're not going to get it all the time. You're not going to understand everything the first time, but that's why you keep revising, and that's why you get a life education. You can come back and refresh and revise and renew and update at any stage whatsoever throughout your career. And you're constantly revising. It means you're digging that depth of knowledge, and that's going to serve you really well when you start to relate to other allied health professionals such as physiotherapists and chiropractors and doctors. And I can say that me building that means I can speak from an anatomical physiological point of view on the same level of all of those allied health professionals, and even to a deeper level, because they don't know exercise. You know, a physio doesn't study exercise. A chiropractor doesn't study exercise. A doctor doesn't. Adductor. Yeah, well, the adductor, you know, the muscle that adducts. Yeah, just a little sidetrack. A doctor who they don't study exercise. They study their lanes. You are an expert in your lane. So be proud and be confident that you are the owner of your lane, and you're not going to be led by anybody else, because you know that you're led by anatomy and physiology, and that is undisputable. That is concrete. That is undebatable. You can't debate it because you're debating something which is more factual. So be proud and be confident in your lane when you're relating to other experts in their lanes, because you're an expert in your lane. So make sure that in your lane you become an expert, rather than the person who just does as little as they can to get the ticket. You know, the goal of life is to accumulate knowledge, accumulate experiences, accumulate skills, and that's going to serve you well. It's going to be the most valuable thing that you have, because once you've got that knowledge and skills and you've got that experience, no one can take that away from you, and you can crystallize that into the qualification. Yeah, as an exercise professional or max exercise professional, you've got the qualification, that is the ticket, which is great. But behind that ticket, it's not shallow, it's not superficial. Behind that ticket is a massive amount of experiences, knowledge, and that will be known, that will be obvious when you converse with your clients, with other trainers, and obviously when you converse with other allied health professionals. And you will respect yourself. You respect yourself because you're the real deal. You're not that person who did as little as possible to get the ticket, but hoping that no one asks you a question about why am I doing this and how does it work. For example, Rory was having a chat with a personal trainer. They said, we've come with this new functional form of training that works more of the core. And Rory asked, which core muscles does it work more, and how much more does it work? What is the absolute measurement of that? And the person didn't know what to say. He just made this general comment. So if you're going to make those general comments of this works the core, and someone says, what are the 7 muscles that make up the core? You can go, yeah, well, they are rectus abdominis and the transverse abdominis and internal external obliques. And you've got the rectus spinae, and you've got metaphysis, and you've got quadratus lumborum. And you know all of those muscles, you know where they insert, where they originate, you know their line of pull, you know their action, you know their function. And you know what bones and bones they move, and what joints they move, and how they move them, and how that relates to the outcome or the goals of the client. Rather than going, well, it's just really good for you, it's just really good. If someone says this is great, the best fat burning exercise, is how is it the best fat burning exercise? How is that measured? Is that measured through energy production? Is it measured by fat? Is it measured by lipolysis? How is that actually measured? If you say things such as, results are 80% nutrition, 20% exercise, and someone says, well, 80% of what? What is the absolute measurement? 80% of, what is it 80% of? 80% of food? Is it 80% of calories? Is it 80% of energy? Is it 80% of time? What is it 80% of? And most people, if you ask that question, I'd even say all people, if you ask that question, 80% of what? And they won't know how to answer it. So which means if you don't know the processes to get to that statement, then that statement many times is just gossip. What you've done is if you've taken a statement from someone else, someone else's opinion, because it's maybe delivered with confidence and is delivered from someone who's a proclaimed expert, and they're making this claim and they're razzle-dazzling you, and you go, wow, that's a great little quote, that's a good catch cry, and you go and then you pass it on. So you become an expert of someone else's opinion. And you've passed it on and you've added your own twist to it and take ownership of it. So you're really a gossiper. What you've done is you've taken a piece of information from someone else, you've taken ownership and you pass it on from mouth to ear, mouth to ear. And we know that that can become quite exaggerated. And the more people do that, the more people believe it. Because 5 million people doing a dumb thing doesn't mean it's not a dumb thing. Because everyone else is doing it doesn't mean it's right. Don't just follow the herd. Justify what you're doing. And don't become an expert in someone else's opinion. Because ultimately you have to ask yourself, why am I doing this and how does it work? And how can I justify it from an anatomical, physiological, biomechanical, or any, what is the absolute measurement? And the beautiful thing with anatomy and physiology, they're all measurable. You can quantify. So to make the statement, you can quantify the results to justify the claim or the projected outcome. And if you do that, you're just going to stand firm and you're going to be a specialist. You're going to be an exercise professional specialist, not just a fashion trainer following the herd.